Great. And my name is Pascal Agbadi, and I'm honored to be invited to talk about this important topic in a free webinar. So I'll be very glad all of us can actively participate. I want to make this as interactive as possible. And I want to believe that everybody that is online today is here because we want to learn about the use of theory in research. I'm not an expert. I'm also learning, and I would talk a lot about a lot of the learning experiences I've had regarding this topic, and and I hope that many of us who are online who already experienced can also freely share their experience regarding the use of theory in research. Okay, so, and I'll be very glad we can respond because I designed this slide so that it will be interactive. And I also talk about my experience in doing research, especially during my master's and PhD, the challenges I faced regarding the use of theory. And the reason why I'm passionate about this, because I've later realized that um, adopting a theoretical approach in research actually makes your work easier, focus, and you can easily communicate what your contribution to knowledge is. Okay, so quick question. I want all of us to think about this. Um, yeah, unfortunately, yeah, I'm talking about winter, but it's possible that many of us do not have a winter experience yet, but I want to just pose the question, why do you think people get sick more in winter? So maybe for Ghana, we can talk about Hamatan because Hamatan is, it mimics winter in a way. Any ideas? Or why do you think people get sick more in the raining season in Ghana? So feel free to talk. You can unmute yourself and respond.
No, this is
Yeah.
promise. I think is because our system adjusts to new things,
Mm,
and because we are used to the heat. Once
mm,
the weather changes to cold, our
mm.
system has to. I don't have any scientific opinion, but I feel we adapt
Yeah.
to
Mm,
our system have to adapt to the changes, and in doing so,
mm,
we get to go some uh, not do ourselves until this just new system or whichever
mm.
one we find ourselves in. That is why we get to fall sick in the Harmattan season. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, great. Don't worry about it being scientific. Sometimes people throw scientific around to scare us. So, yeah, I mean, anything at all that comes to your mind, why do you think people get sick in the Hamatan? Yeah. Or the raining season in Ghana. Yeah. Any other ideas? I can see it. I think some people are putting in okay. Any ideas? Don't be
I
shy.
think the flooding also comes with the disruption in sewage management. So we have all
Mm,
this fecal matter and all that's floating around and causing disease.
wonderful. I want so this is gender balance already. Let's see whether yeah. So increase in mosquito breeding, rainwater collects in containers, gutters, creating breeding places for mosquito that spread disease such as malaria. Wonderful. Any other response from us? All right, so maybe I'll just move on. If you have any ideas, just bring it up as we continue with our discussion on the use of theory in research.
Good evening. Please, I would like to add
Evening.
on with the flooding. During
Great.
flooding, sometimes the water pushes garbage or rubbish into other water bodies, thereby causing diseases like cholera.
Wonderful. Great. Actually, what you've done, you are basically trying to theorize. Do you understand? You are basically trying to offer an explanation for why people get sick uh, in the raining season or in Hamatan. So all that the brainstorming we are doing is basically we are trying to really understand something. So if I had asked, why do you think people get HIV/AIDS? A lot of people will come up with plenty explanations. Some will be social, others will be cultural, others will also be spiritual. So all those, in a way, you are basically trying to theorize. You're trying to come up with an explanation for a phenomenon or an issue you are observing. So theorizing is not really anything big. Sometimes when you hear about theory, you get scared. I did my bachelor's back in Ghana in social work and information studies at the University of Ghana. Anytime they mention theory, like I panic. Even though I was a first class student, I I'm comfortable with anything but theory because of the way it was presented. It's as though we couldn't or we did not have the power or the ability to theorize. But we've been doing theorizing since we were kids and our parents. There were times as little kids, maybe after school, we go home, then we start bombarding our parents with a lot of questions. I have three girls. Sometimes they come back from school and they are asking, Daddy, why is this? Why is my gum hurting? Daddy, why is this? And now I have to try to give them an explanation. Oh, Daddy, why this person didn't say hello even though I said hello? So in our everyday interaction, we are trying to really offer an explanation for the things that are happening around us. So all of you have given a lot of fantastic explanations as to why people fall sick. Now, yes, so somebody talks about a change in environment. Basically, our body need to adjust to that. So that has to do with our immune system. And also during the cold season, because of flooding and I mean, we know, especially Ghana, in a lot of urban areas, when it rains, people just dump rabbiches or even like unkept rabbishes are spread around. And all those things move viruses and parasites around. And when you come into contact with them, you can easily fall sick. Yeah, also in the raining season, it's a good breeding period for uh, mosquitoes. And if you have a lot of them, then they have to find a way to feed themselves to survive. So they go around. So if you don't have uh, protective gears, then you are likely to uh, get malaria. So all of us offered plenty reasons why people get sick, either in the winter or raining season or in the Hamatan. So that reason is basically theory. So you are basically trying to come up with an explanation for why something happens. So, but how do we know? I mean, I'm sure many of you, your reason actually came from maybe reading or from lived experience or what others have told you. Um, I don't know. I would want to know from the last person who spoke. How did you come to know the reason for falling sick in the rain season? How did you know? Is it from lived experience or from reading or somebody told you?
Please, from reading.
Okay. Yeah, so basically there are multiple sources of knowing. Uh, so you either read or lived experience, maybe from your own experience, probably during the raining season. That is when you usually get malaria or somebody told you. So basically knowledge is socially and intellectually transmitted. So socially means you learn from people, you learn from your own experience, and the intellectual transmission basically come from reading the literature or even blogs, newspapers, and it gives you a clear idea. Okay, so this is what causes this. I'm sure before we know what AIDS was, many of us, we have not seen it in person. We can't really explain it, so we have to rely on what the scientific data or literature tells us about the causes or the mechanism through which HIV/AIDS is gotten. Now we get to a very important aspect of theory. The question is, can we prove it? Now, that is basically what research is about. So you have an explanation, but we need to subject that explanation to test. We have to really test it because anything that is not tested, we can accept it as fact and it can be useful. Do you understand? So that is why we do research. So if you have an explanation, then it's important we do research to formally test whether our explanation hold up against evidence. I'm going to ask you one simple question. Why do you think people migrate? This is an open question. Why do you think, let's say, like, if somebody is in Ghana now, why do you want to leave Ghana to another place?
Well, for economic reasons.
Economic reasons. Okay. Those economic reasons, can they be fulfilled in Ghana?
Maybe tried but failed. So we want to try.
You want to try another place and see whether it will work. Okay, any other reason? Yeah.
Dog, for
Yeah,
education
so
reasons.
come
Education.
again?
Education. To
Education,
school.
yeah. So people also want to migrate because of higher education. Greener pastures. When I was very young, I've been hearing greener pastures. I didn't know what it meant. But I've been to a lot of countries and I'm still looking for the pastures that are green. Yeah, anyway. So we have a lot of reasons. Actually, when I came to Australia, a lot of people thought that, oh, it's poor people who migrate. And I'm sure that in many people's mind, even in some of your minds, you would think that it's poor people who actually migrate. So then because my thesis was basically uh, my PhD thesis was basically trying to prove that if you are poor, you can't migrate. So there were competing theories in migration literature. Others are saying the reason why people migrate because where they are, like they are poor, so they want to move elsewhere to make money. And another theory also says that no, uh, poverty doesn't actually lead people to migrate, but it's rather when people are developing economically or when countries are undergoing rapid development, that is when people through news media and other networks, they get to know of opportunities elsewhere. Then their aspirations are activated. Then they also want to have an experience. So it's not poverty per se that leads people to migrate. Others are saying that poverty is the reason why people migrate. So for my PhD thesis, I want to the simple question of which of these hypotheses actually is true with reference to Africa. Yeah, so until you prove what your explanation is, you subject it to scientific evidence. Yeah, people migrate to join their spouses or relatives. Yeah, wonderful. So those are family reasons. So in migration literature, we have what we call family reasons. Yeah, so until we subject your explanation to scientific rigor, we can't know whether what you are telling us is useful. It's not about truth per se, but it's whether the explanation you are giving is it useful. If we collect data, analyze the data, can we come to the conclusion? Because in the reasons you are giving, you already have hypothetical conclusion. The assumption is that anytime it rains, I mean, from your lived experience, mosquitoes would breed and people will get malaria. The other question somebody will ask is that do all people get malaria, even in the same condition? So that would push you further to think, okay, if all people do not get malaria during the raining season, so why do some people get malaria and others do not get malaria? So you are basically expanding on the reason. So somebody say, oh, when it rains, mosquitoes breed and that leads to malaria, but you keep pushing further and further. So basically you are developing your theory, but until you collect data and test it, you can't really know whether what you are offering as an explanation is true. So that is one thing we need to keep in mind. In Ghana, all of us have a lot of reason. I'm sure if we should ask why Ghana didn't win the 2010 World Cup, we would get about 35 million reasons because every Ghanaian more or less is a football coach and knows why something didn't. But if we subject all those 34 million explanations to research, would we be able to prove that indeed my explanation is true or not? So that is the entire reason why we should think properly about theory in research. Sometimes people do not really consider theory seriously in research, but it's very important because by using theory, you are basically building on some existing explanations. Then you can clearly say that, okay, this explanation that maybe Abena et al. Have given about this issue doesn't hold up against evidence, specifically within the context of maybe Southern Ghana or Northern Ghana or Togo or Benin or Ivory Coast. So what is a theory? I mean, basically, it's just a formal, testable explanation of a phenomenon. So a lot of the time, theory is basically specifying the relationships between like variables. So when we talk about concepts, we talk about attitude, intention, norm. You want to understand something. even income is a concept that can be measured, household wealth, raining season, uh, dry season, all these are concepts that can be measured. Or even the weather, whether it is hot, whether the temperature is warm or cold, all that can be measured. Then when we talk about relationship, we basically want to know how these concepts are connected together. In some examples that we've heard, people talk about mosquito breeding during the raining season, and that leads to people getting malaria. So you are basically establishing a relationship between uh, mosquito breeding season and malaria, prevalence of malaria. So your propositions, so basically these are testable statements derived from the relationship. So you basically state the direction. So you are saying there's a positive relationship between mosquito breeding season and the likelihood of getting malaria. So we know the direction. So it means like the more mosquito breeding seasons we get, the higher the likelihood that people would get malaria. So sometimes also we have what we call boundary conditions. So you would have to state when and where the theory applies, because some of the explanations you've given might not be applicable in other countries. For example, let's say in Australia, yeah, they have mosquitoes, but they do not give malaria. They give other forms of disease, like maybe dengue fever. Then they are in other countries where even if mosquitoes bite you, they do not give you malaria. Yeah, and there are countries where even during the raining season, there are no mosquitoes at all. So it's important to clarify the boundary conditions. So theories must meet all these conditions. We need to know the concept that must be measured and the relationship between those concepts and the propositions or the testable statements derived from the relationship, whether one affect the other or in which direction and under what conditions that these need to be applied. Yeah. Now, I mean, we've seen it. We've just experimented with two things: why people migrate and why people fall sick in during winter or the rainy season or the harmattan. So I have decided to, in my experience reading about theory, what I have come to realize is that there are basically two ways to look at theory. In some phenomenon, you have like complementary theory. So these are theories basically emphasizing different causes of the same thing. They are not challenging themselves. So those are what I call complementary theories. So theory A may emphasize maybe cognitive factors, theory B may emphasize social norms, and theory C may emphasize structural barriers. And in some people's research work, they would state that all these complementary theories are important in understanding a particular issue they are interested in. In that case, so some would say they are putting together an integrative theoretical framework because they've concluded that all the theories are really important in explaining why something happens. Then we also have what we call the competing hypothesis or competing theory. So these are uh, like maybe a group, different types of theories offering different reasons for the same phenomenon. So, and a lot of the time they are competing because the propositions are in different directions. So, for example, as I mentioned, in migration, people think that poverty produces a lot of migrants. So the assumption is that poor countries would produce more migrants. Then there is another competing hypothesis that says that actually poor countries do not produce international migrants because to migrate, you need a lot of money. There are a lot of barriers that you need to overcome to migrate. So if you are from a poor country, the likelihood that you would migrate is very low. I'm sure many of us on the Zoom now have some experience. Even though you have the desire probably to just visit elsewhere, even for education, or even join your spouse, or just move elsewhere for economic reasons. It's not easy. And you've been reading a lot of stories in Ghana about connection men, promising people if you bring this amount of money, and a lot of it doesn't actually materialize. So being poor actually is a big barrier in fulfilling international migration dreams or aspirations. And another thing also is that so these are competing theories. So how do you know? I mean, how do we know which of these theories, especially regarding international migration, how do we know which one is true? On one hand, a lot of developed countries will say that, oh, too many Africans are coming here. Too many people from poor countries are coming to our country. We need to close the door. We need to do this. We need to do that. Then there are others saying that, I mean, how many of them do you see? When I was young, I thought that, I mean, migrating, especially if you're from Africa, it would be easy. But when I started preparing to move to countries, then I realized that it's more difficult to leave any country in Africa to the Western world. Because beyond, for example, I went out to study, beyond securing admission, you need to come face to face with what we call the immigration. Yeah, and they have different rules. Some of them may even subject you to several health screening. And a lot of people just give up along the line because you need this, you need a bank statement, you need this. So why do they want bank statements? So they basically don't want people who don't have money to come to their country. So during my PhD, I realized that actually the countries in Africa that produce some decent number of migrants are the ones that are relatively doing better. And migration occurs mainly when countries within Africa are undergoing rapid development and urbanization. So poverty doesn't produce a lot of international migrants. I mean, from our own experience, many of us come from villages. I come from Ziopi in the Volta region, and my dad's also, because I live in Ziopi throughout, so I always say I come from Ziopi because I spent a lot of my childhood in Ziopi. But my hometown is Abo, and my dad also told me that we originally came from Tegbi. So we are from, I mean, just cast your mind back in some of our rural areas or villages. How many do we know that have migrated compared to, let's say, people who have lived their entire life in, let's say, Kumasi or Accra or even Tamale? So urbanization development actually is what propel migration, and is not poverty. Because a lot of the time, I mean, according to the Maslow's theory of need, if you're at the bottom, you are basically concerned about basic necessities. So to migrate or to even imagine elsewhere requires some form of capacity. So we have competing explanations. So you have to do research to determine which of these competing theories explain what you are interested in better. I was interested in African migration because I became tired hearing the same thing as though the African who migrates are poor. I've always been saying that Africans who migrate are not poor because to pull your resources together, to put your money together to meet all immigration requirements, you need a lot of capital, not just economic capital. You also need social capital. For instance, when I was going to do my PhD, I needed reference letters. I got one reference letter from Professor Nuto and another from Professor Nakwa from KNEST and one also from Professor Jomeku. So you if you are not if you don't have the social capital, if you don't have the economic capital, like you can't actually move. So this is very important. And you also need health capital in the sense that because you could be denied visa on the grounds that you are not healthy. Yeah. So to move, you need to be rich in economic, social, and health capital. So basically through my thesis, I was able to debunk the idea that poverty is what is largely driving uh, migration from Africa. What I found was aspirations. People move because they want opportunities to fulfill their aspirations. So that is one thing. So until you do research, especially in the context where they are competing debates about what explains a particular phenomenon, you wouldn't really know which theory or which explanation holds up against evidence. So I want to convince you to think seriously about theory and basically I want to tell you why using theory is better than not using theory. For my bachelor's long essay, I didn't understand this clearly. So I just put everything together and wrote my long essay without understanding what I was doing. So theory gives your research focus, logic, and a clear contribution. And what I've also come to realize is that when you decide on a theory for a particular thing you are interested in, it focuses your literature search. You don't just go, for example, migration. You don't go to, let's say, Scopus or Google and just say migration. Because if you just type migration or why people migrate, you're going to come up with millions and millions of explanations. And how do you put all that together to make sense of it, even start designing your project? So it's very important to think about theory because theory gives your research focus, logic, and a clear contribution. You can see here, without theory, what you are running into is broad and focused reading of all literature, no clear guiding logic for what to measure, hard to know what variables to include, unclear how your findings advance knowledge. So it becomes very difficult to also indicate what your contribution is, especially in master's or PhD, or those of you who are thinking of pursuing higher education outside. Sometimes you are required to put your proposal together. And if you just write anything, the potential supervisor will just think that now this person is all over. It was very difficult for me. And for me, by working with a lot of professors in Ghana, Nuto, Jomeku, Nakwa, and many of my other colleagues, by working closely with them and doing research together with them, and even some of my friends, Isaac Yabua, by working together and doing those things, like I became clear on the importance of theory. So sometimes it's possible that even with your first class or second class APA, the reason why probably you are not getting a supervisor is because your proposal does not have a theoretical focus, or you are just writing. These days, it's very easy to put content together, especially using ChatGPT or any of the AI models. So you may not get any feedback from those potential supervisors. It's not because they hate you, it's simply because they don't know what you want to do, and they don't know how what you are proposing will make any contribution to ongoing discussions around why a particular phenomenon you are interested in matter. So using theory puts you in a better position, even as you are thinking of getting an external supervisor to agree even before you start the application, to even think of putting your resources together to migrate. I remember when I finished University of Ghana in 2011, I've tried multiple times to study at one of the universities in Norway. So the first time I applied, they rejected. The second time, they did not even get back to me to tell me why I was rejected. So with my poor allowance, national service allowance I saved from school, I went to buy MTN credit and I called the university. I said, I mean, let me know the feedback. Have I been given admission or not? They said I should check my email. I said, I've checked my email. I have not seen anything. Then they said I should check my spam. I said, I've checked my spam. There is nothing in there. They say, okay, if you've not heard from us by this date, it simply means that you've not been given admission. They did not even consider my application to, or they did not even honor it by even telling me that I've been rejected. Then the third time, I tried again. This time around, I added a proposal, just one page proposal, but everything was clear. I know the questions, I had a clear research questions, I had a clear theoretical focus. Then I got admission to do my master's in health promotion at the University of Bergen. When I got there, I was told the reason why I was picked, I was even picked first because I was the only one who attached a proposal to my application. And I was the only one with clear research questions and testable propositions. And my project was basically something funny. I was interested in SOS. You know, those of us who have gone to University of, I think maybe now it has changed. Those days we have what we call, excuse my language, shit on shit. So sometimes you go to, especially a Quaffle hall, by the time you get to the M block, the whole place is smelling. So I got there and I'm like, maybe there's a potential relationship between this type of practice and the number of cholera or sickness cases that are being reported at the hospital clinic. So I just built a simple hypothesis around that based on social determinant of health. Eventually, that was not what my thesis was on, but that communicated to those on the panel that, oh, this guy already has a structure in his mind, what a research is all about. So please, so theory is important. It might be the reason why maybe your proposal has not been taken seriously when you are trying to apply for higher education. The truth is a lot of professors outside are very, very busy and they get supervision requests from thousands and thousands of students. So, and they have to choose. And when they have to choose because you have something interesting to work on. It doesn't matter where you want to do your study, but is it interesting? Do you have a theory and all that? All right. So how do you find a theory? The truth is everything you are interested in, specifically in your discipline, there are a lot of theories basically dealing with that. So you need to be precise. What do you really want to understand? What are you passionate about? What problem in your society, like, do you want to understand? Maybe to the point of proposing some policy solutions. So you need to be clear on that. Then you need to search the literature. Specifically look for theoretical frameworks that scholars have used to study this phenomenon. You know, we have a saying that there is nothing new under the sun. And it is true. So a lot of people have come up with multiple explanations already. And some of these theories have been tested over and over again. And those that do not hold up against evidence, they usually get a natural death. So you have to read the literature specifically focusing on what theoretical frameworks exist. I mean, if you want to use ChatGPT, you should rather be specific. Okay, this is the topic I'm interested in. What theories exist for me? And go ahead and look for the literature on those theories and read them. And ask yourself, which of them would help me explain my context? Or which of them can I make contribution to? Then you have to evaluate the fit. So that does the theory, construct, and assumption align with your research context? Because some theories may probably be designed for specific context, like maybe high income country context. So if you want to use it, are you in a way modifying it, which will be your contribution, or are you trying to extend it by using it in a particular context to see whether this theory would help explain something? Or you are borrowing from a different field, a theory from a different field to understand a phenomenon in a different field. Maybe you are from psychology, but you are interested in understanding a psychological problem through a sociological lens. So you can then borrow, but you need to really understand whether that can be helpful. Then after, you would have to state your contribution. So will you test, extend, or challenge the theory in a new setting or population? So these are things that you need to, so these are just the 4 steps that you need to think about. Now, I want to use HIV testing behavior as an example. I have done a lot of work in this area together with Professor Nuto. So, and I also want to use one popular theory that usually many have used in this field. There are other theories like the social determinant of health. So this is a social psychology theory, basically to demonstrate how to use theory. Any questions up to this point before we start with the examples? Yeah. Okay. If there are no questions, then I would continue. Maybe in the end, we can open the floor for questions. So you want to understand HIV testing behavior. So the question is, what factors predict whether someone will get tested for HIV? We might think that this is a very simple issue, but we already know that HIV testing is important, because if you know your status, you know how to live. And if you test and you are negative, that's good. You continue doing the right thing. And if you test and you are positive, that is also good, because now you know and you can learn how to live with a condition and be better in terms of quality of life. So HIV testing has a lot of policy implication, because if you have HIV and you do not know, you are likely to maybe infect others. The reason why it's critical is because till date, we do not know the cure for this. It's not like malaria that if you get tested quickly and they put you on some medication prescription, it can go. This doesn't go easily. So it's important that we do HIV testing. So the question, so there are a lot of theories. When you go to the literature to check, I mean, what theories are people using to explain HIV testing behavior? You will see a lot. So the question is, which of them would make sense to you? Or which ones that if you combine can help you explain the situation better? Or sometimes you can, after going through a lot of the literature review around the specific theory and the HIV testing behavior, you can see a gap. Oh, okay, these people, they are only talking about this and this and this, but this particular issue in Ghana that is very, very important are not being considered. Then you can build on the theory that, okay, you are using this theory, but you are extending this theory by adding this explanation. So, for example, in my PhD thesis, I included political connection in Ghana as a reason why people migrate. So I frame it under opportunity structures. And I tested that using an African data set, basically checking all countries, basically the extent to which you will need to have political connections before you can get a secured job, or the extent to which you need political connections before you can even bid and win government contracts. So what I realized was that that has more explanatory power as to why especially highly educated people will leave Africa to other countries than other factors. So I just extended the existing theory called the aspiration capability approach. So when you are extending a theory, you basically test all their existing hypothesis and you add yours to it. You are just extending it. Either you are introducing it as a moderator or as an independent variable. So this is the question I'm interested in, and I want to apply the theory of planned behavior. So, and why am I using the theory of planned behavior? Because HIV testing is a voluntary intentional health behavior. And the theory of planned behavior was specifically designed to explain intentional behavior. So, I mean, you can clearly see that I'm trying to understand whether this theory will help me explain this. You cannot use theory of planned behavior to study, let's say, why people get malaria when it rains. But you can use the theory of planned behavior to understand why people during the raining season do not sleep in mosquito nets. I mean, personally, I don't like sleeping in mosquito net because it feels to me like I'm in some small prison. But so you until so you can use the theory of planned behavior because putting on a mosquito net is a voluntary. Nobody will put a gun on your head to tell you should put on a, I mean, sleep in a mosquito net. There were instances even in Ghana where they distributed treated nets to all people, and yet some people in the night they do not use it. And you'll be surprised to know that some people even use the nets for fishing. So so you can use the theory of planned behavior to understand why people do not use mosquito nets. So within the theory of planned behavior, what you would get is that they have some explanations already for certain behaviors. So their explanations are around people's attitudes, subjective norms, and perceived behavioral control. And all these can be measured and they are theoretically grounded. So you need to know, okay, so what does the TPB means by attitude, subjective norm? So you have to read. If you just use, let's say, ChatGPT to put this thing together and you send to any external supervisor, they will know. They can clearly see that you've not read yourself. So it's important to look at it. So the question I'm basically, what factors predict whether someone will get tested for HIV? Yeah, and we've done some work in this area also, but we use the social determinant of health. So what factors predict whether someone will get tested for HIV? Okay, so based on the theory of planned behavior, we need to collect data on people's attitude towards the behavior, the subjective norms, and perceived behavioral control. Then we also need to collect data on their intention to test. Then the eventual testing behavior. So if you are trying to make a contribution to the theory of planned behavior in understanding why people test for HIV, you will realize that you're not going to read all the literature on so many other things. Your work will be focused and you can clearly say what your contribution is. It's possible that after reviewing the literature regarding the use of theory of planned behavior in explaining HIV testing behavior, it will probably just come up clearly that not many studies have actually used it in Ghana. And even those studies that have used it in Ghana have not operationalized all the constructs or all the variables that matter properly, or even the nature of the analysis are not in line with the assumptions around the theory of planned behavior. So, but if you do not do this scanning, you cannot make this clear justification. So you need to justify why you want to use theory of planned behavior in Ghana or with a particular group. It might not just be a Ghana, with a particular group in Ghana. And if other studies have used it, then you go further and check, have they used it properly? Because sometimes the contribution you make to a theory in a particular context is because previous studies, even though they've mentioned that they are using a particular theory, they have not used it properly. Do you get it? So then you state all those reasons. Then somebody will read it and say, oh, okay, this looks like somebody who has really read and is ready to use theory to understand his work. Yeah. So you operationalize the theory. So attitude, basically, when we talk about attitude, it's like an individual's positive or negative evaluation of getting tested for HIV. I'm sure if I ask many of you right now, when was the last time you've done HIV testing, it's going to be, many of us do not even know. Or others, anytime they are at a particular place and say, oh, we are coming to do free HIV screening, that day they will be busy. They have a reason for avoiding it. So all that can fall under this operationalization. So another way to extend the theory is that if you realize that, okay, it's not just attitude, it's not just subjective norms, it's not just perceived behavioral control, maybe it's something else, then you can make a case and add that to the framework. Then that becomes your contribution to the theory. So within the theory of planned behavior, as we've already mentioned, theories must have propositions. So these are the theoretical hypotheses that would come from your work. After having reviewed the literature, settled on theory of planned behavior, know where it's been applied, how it's been applied, and you can make a case why you want to apply it. Then you can have clear. So these are things that you can actually collect data on and test. So you are doing research again to see whether these explanations within the theory of planned behavior hold up against evidence. So at the end of the day, it is clear what contribution you are going to make. Your first contribution already is you are testing the validity of the theory in a particular context. Or you are even identifying which of the constructs has the greatest influence in this context. It's possible that maybe subjective norm would have a much greater influence than maybe attitude or even intention given. So you can compare. So when you are doing your discussion basically is more about stating your findings and clarifying your contribution. So that is so using theory basically puts you in a better place to state your contributions clearly. And sometimes you finish testing the theory and realize that, okay, this theory cannot explain. One trouble I have in Ghana is that some people, they've collect data and they run the analysis, and what they are expecting is not what they got. Then they feel discouraged. If you collect the data well and your analysis and your results show something opposite to what the earlier research has stated, that actually is also a contribution, because you are creating the ground to disprove the validity of that particular theory in that context. So I've had an experience with a friend. I was helping her do a research. After running the analysis, she said, "Oh, according to the theory, this is supposed to have a positive effect. But now I'm seeing it's a negative effect. Maybe we did not do the analysis where I said, okay, let's do it again. We done that now we came. Then he said, no, no, no. My supervisor will not like this. I don't want to. I said, so that is once you start thinking this way, once you want your result to agree with the stated propositions, then you are basically confirming your negative result is a contribution to the theory. Other people would say, okay, how did he set up his project? So another person would also set it up again and see whether they want to repeat your work and see whether they will get the same thing in a different context. So that is how people throw away bad theories. So when you get negative results, don't be afraid. You can publish this. I've seen people publish papers where nothing was even significant because the theory is saying something has to be significant. So if you've put everything together properly and it's not significant, it's actually a contribution. It means that within your context, this theory cannot help explain the particular phenomenon that they said it should explain. Now, what are the key takeaways from today's discussion? Yeah, already a lot of you have reasons for why something happened. You're basically theorizing without knowing. Yeah, so the theory is like a formal testable explanation, something we can test, an explanation we can subject to research and come out with a conclusion. And many of us are doing that every day. I mean, on a light note, a lot of people, I mean, when I was in University of Ghana, I was told, I don't know whether it's true, that ladies like have multiple boys and they are basically checking the compatibility. So the one that they are compatible with is the one they will eventually marry. So you are basically, so you have some series of hypotheses in your mind about all these people, and you are collecting data in different ways. Maybe your form of data collection is how does this person call you? Does he have a pet name for you? Does this person, I mean, buy you uh, teddy bears or or give you something small without you asking. Does this person care about you? So then you are comparing all these data from all these people. Then you check, oh, this one is better. This one will make my life more meaningful. So we do that every day. Even the men, they also do it. I've been seeing a lot, some of these things in, how do we call it? Nigerian comedies, they call it marriage material. So it's like we already have some funny theories in our head who an ideal woman is. So you are collecting data, like going, then you also have your friends, then they will start calling you our wife. All that is data collection. They are collecting data to prove who actually is a marriage material. So we are already doing this intuitively. But when it comes to your area of research, it's important that you get into the literature and search and identify what theories people are using to explain the phenomenon, and decide which of them you are going to use to do your type of work. And sometimes it just comes from, maybe you are interested in that topic because something hit you differently. Then you go into the literature and say, oh, okay, so these are the existing theories. Okay, so this theory, I can help develop this theory by adding these aspects. Maybe this, what I'm thinking to this, right? So theory gives your research direction, focus, and justified variable selection. If you don't have a theory, you're likely to put everything in your statistical model. And your contribution basically is to test, extend, or challenge a theory with new data. So that is basically what is expected of us. And so the good thing is you start with the phenomenon, you search for theories, justify your choice, state your hypothesis, collect data, test it, and let's know what your new finding is. Thank you. Any questions?
Wow. This is a very exciting session that I've experienced once again today. And taking us right from the beginning, some of us not even knowing what theory is all about, and breaking it down to understanding and even how to apply it and all of that. I think this is a great information that many people would have to pay for, but you have given it to us freely, and we are so much thankful for that. Yeah, so the floor is open now for questions. I know some people might not be able to speak, but the chat box is open, so you can drop your questions over there, and we'll pick it up from there. But anybody who is okay to speak, the floor is open, so you can just unmute and then ask your questions. Feel free, don't be shy. Just grab the knowledge and then make use of it. So this is the time. So the floor is open. Yeah. Anyone?
Hey, Pascal, thank you so much for a very good presentation on theory and application of theory. So, I have a question which I think may be helpful for us to get to. So, how about if you gather the data and the part of that data doesn't actually fit in into the theory or doesn't support the theory? How do you handle that?
Okay. Yeah, so I'll give two scenarios. Maybe you are using the secondary data. So basically, you are not the one who collected it, and you are trying to now use theory to explain your work. Okay, so one, maybe if the variables that the theory is proposing, if some of them are not there, it's okay to still go ahead. I mean, in your theory section, indicate everything and acknowledge that you do not have all the variables that the theory proposes, I mean, in your limitation, and just go ahead and do what you can with the available data. But the use of theory, as I've discussed here, especially if you're planning your own primary study, what it means is that if theory is what is starting the work, then we would expect that all the data that comes in are based on the theory. Of course, there are instances where maybe after reading about the theory and in your best judgment, what you think should be the variable, you might make some mistake in operationalizing those data properly. So you can acknowledge that also in your limitations, because research is just that a lot of the time we don't have research, but research is like when you make some mistake, you can always go back and refine and keep doing it over and over again. So here, I mean, even Prof. Nuto, who asked the question, he, I mean, I've also learned a lot from him. A lot of the time, what is usually advised is that you do pilot study. When you decide, okay, I'm using the theory of planned behavior, you've collected the data. I mean, you design your questionnaire based on all the constructs in those theories. You first pilot it, and based on that small uh, pilot's data collection process, you realize that, okay, this aspect of the question is not clear. So the pilot is a process of feedback and refinement. So then you do that. But there have been instances where maybe you are doing a qualitative research, and a lot of the time I've seen people say they are doing grounded theories, like they've just asked open question, and a lot of the data comes in, and now they have to generate theory from the data. So there are instances where you can generate new theories from data, even though the data collection did not start with a specific theory in mind. But it's important, even when what you aim to do is grounded theory, it's important that you justify why you are taking that approach and why you think that existing theories are limited in explaining some of these things. Of course, many of these theories may be developed from the Western world, and they may not have the eyes to see a lot of our local realities. In that case, you have a good reason to go to the field with an open mind, even though you are aware of a lot of other theories. And after you got the data, you begin to see that some of the informations you are gathering from the field align with maybe particular theory or multiple theories. So it's always the case that your data will align with some theory or another. If it doesn't, then you have to creatively push it as a contribution to an existing theory you are working with. Yeah. I don't know whether I've answered your question, JJ.
Absolutely, you've done that. No, that's very good. Thank you. That's so helpful to know. And I don't know if there's anybody with a question. So let me pause and then I'll allow others to ask a question. But yeah, I see.
Yes, thank you so much. Reverend Ebenezer on the call, please, you can unmute and speak. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Just to add on to what you said, are you trying to say that it is 100% correct that in using the theories in your research should it be necessarily support the theory in any research you are doing? Because if we try to go by that, it means then there wouldn't be any new theory found. Even in Ghana, you can do a research looking at the geographical dimension or the contextual. You could be maybe taking it from a central region or even, let's say, upper east or upper west. You can collect data, and at the end of the day, it may differ it may differ in how the literature or the theory that you are using to support. Either one may support, it may support one, other it might not support the other. Because if you were doing maybe a cross-sectional interview, the people, their perception, their behavior are not the same. It can change. So you can even do it within a same region, but you may end up getting one supporting the theory and the other one not also supporting the theory. But it's good that you have acknowledged that when it happens like that, it means it adds on to literature for us to see that, yes, there are new ones. It is me when I read your work and I see that all the hypotheses that you set are supporting. At times, I doubt it. I think that there's going to be some sort of manipulation here and there because most of the theories are old, profounded. Maybe they were dead in 60s, 50s, and 30s as well. So it doesn't necessarily mean that generation changes, idea changes. People are beginning to think differently as we have a millennia and all these people. They are thinking and responding to various questions that differ. So it doesn't necessarily mean that even though you were using it, the theory to support the research, it might be that you were using the wrong theory, of which, as we said, there could be what? A multiples of theory could be 3 or 2 that might have supported the work that you were doing instead of you trying to support it with only one theory. So I support even your own answer, but I don't think that in all things we do, we should have all our work being supported by the theory that we use. Even when you go through vigorously, you go through the processes, whatever someone has done, whatever, at times it might change in a certain direction. And when it happens like that, that is what we say you have added new thing to literature. So we should accept it and go with it. So that is something small I want to say. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Reverend. Yeah. So as Reverend said, yes, it is true. Some of the propositions might not go the way it's been stated in the theory. I mean, we just have to be honest and report the findings. Yeah, some people are more interested in confirming what the theory has said. But even if you find a negative result, that is a new information or a new contribution you are bringing to people's attention. So that is good. Yeah, but just to emphasize, I mean, when you start with a theory, then you can know why the theory doesn't work and why the new evidence that you are coming with need to be given attention. And you can also use multiple theories, as I've mentioned. So people have what they call integrated theoretical model, where they, after reading the theoretical literature, they realize that, okay, one theory cannot explain this. Then they come up with multiple. When you do your research, through your analysis, you can confirm which of the theories actually matter and to what extent they matter. And those that do not matter, it does not mean that there is anything wrong with the theory. It will just mean that within this particular context, this theory cannot help us understand this. And yeah, so Reverend, thank you very much for that fantastic inputs.
All right. Thank you so much. Reverend. Do you have any other questions? Like I said, you can also put your questions in the chat box and we'll pick it up from there if you're not in the position to speak. So please feel free to do that.
Doc, I want to do a follow-up with if someone does a work without supporting with theory throughout the work from head to finishing, is it acceptable?
Okay, so it's that I'll give two answers. One is not acceptable. For example, if the person doesn't have a reason for not using a theory, okay, and it's acceptable if the person's goal is to do what they call, there's a methodological grounded theory. Basically, you are coming up with a new explanation from your data. So there must be a clear justification for it. If you don't really have a theory, like, I mean, you don't really know even what explanation you are actually even trying to confirm or disprove. So especially for those of us who are new in research, it's important that we consider the use of theory a serious academic venture. Yeah, because I struggled in my long essay because I didn't know what theory to use. I was trying to understand the causes of child labor and I was all over. But if I had understood the principle of theories, I probably would start with one or two theories that are important to the field. Then if I go to the field, collect data, and there are some new or contradictory evidence, then I could have positioned that as my contribution. So yeah, so if you are doing a grounded theory, if you're using a grounded theory as your methodological lens, then that is a clear justification, because what we'll expect is that at the end of your study, you are generating a theory that people have to use to that they have to subject to maybe testing and refinement until we know whether this is useful or not. Yeah.
All right, thank you, Doc, for that response. I think we have a hand up, Isaac, on the call. So please, you can unmute and ask your question. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Pascal, for such an insightful presentation. I want to know from you, do we have, let's say for a thesis, do you have, in terms of the number of theories to use for your thesis, your dissertation? But what will be like the benchmark? Do you have a maximum or a minimum number of theories to use for your dissertation? That's my question.
Okay. Anyway, it depends on the field of research. And another thing you should know is that there are some theories by themselves, they are so large that you can't add any other thing to them. So, for example, there is a theoretical framework in public health called the social determinant of health. It's so vast that I don't know what else you can add to it. Do you get it? Yes. So, and it also depends on the field because, for example, when I was doing PhD in sociology, um, they are very interested in debates. So, debate, we have for and against. So they expect you to engage with all the competing explanations about a particular phenomenon and go ahead and collect data. So for my thesis, for example, I have to review all the existing theories, then decided on the one that there is debate around, the question of poverty or development. Is it poverty that drives migration, or it is development. As at that time, I mean, there have been a number of people who tried to answer that question in Africa, and the way they handle the operationalization of those variables and even the design, the methodology, and all that was not, I mean, according to a task. So then I now have two competing explanations. But when I was in Ghana, when I was doing my data collection, I think I remember correctly, Isaac, you recommended somebody to assist me in that. So when we're going around doing interviews, based on some of the responses that people were giving, I told I think her name is Linda. I told Linda that this is very different from what all the theories that I have read about are saying. And because I'm from Ghana, I took a lot of the things that people have been saying for granted. So when I ask people, why do you want to leave? He says, maybe it's not because I don't have money, but I mean, I want to go higher in my career, but I don't have this connection. I don't have any family member who is a big person in government. So then I started thinking about how to position that new experience or new. This is an old information, but now linked to migration. It has never been linked to migration in that way. So I came to the field with two competing explanations. I want to test them against data and also to understand what is going on. So there is no benchmark to how many theories you can use. One theory can help you position your work, and two also can help. But if you have too many theories, you know, for example, if it is a master's thesis, you need to know how feasible that is. You have just maybe 1 year to do your thesis. If it is a PhD, also, you have 3 years or 4 years, and depending on your context, you probably are going to do a lot of coursework, and then you actually start doing your research for maybe a year and a half. So you may not have enough. Even in economics, what they do is that they have multiple publication chapters, and each chapter is focused on maybe one central hypothesis. So it depends on exactly what you are looking at, especially if you're looking at a topic or an issue that there is a clear understanding that one theory cannot help explain it. Then after reviewing the literature, then you can decide that, okay, for my contribution to this ongoing debate or discussion around this issue, I'm going to adopt 1, 2, 3 theories. Then you justify, okay, this one deals with the social aspect, the other deals with economic aspect, and I'm adding this because all the research prior to this have just focused on social alone, economic alone, and without even considering culture. But for my thesis, I'm going to focus on this theory because it deals with social, this economic, and cultural. So then you have now like a 3-dimension framework for something. The whole idea is that your work must be distinguishable from other works. So it is the contribution that really matters. If two theories can help you make your contribution clear, then you go for it. If one theory can help you clarify your contribution, you go for it. Yeah. Thank you.
All right, Doc. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I think we have 3 minutes on top of the hour, and we want to be respectful of everybody's time. And so, unfortunately, we have to bring it to an end here. And we are pretty privileged to have you give us
I
this
think
wonderful.
my hand has been up. I don't know whether it's just a snappy one.
Okay, just 30 seconds, please, because of the time.
Okay, 30 seconds. Yeah, I want to find out from Dr. Pascal. Why is it that contemporary researchers are not trying to look for new theory, but they are always trying using old theory. What is the case?
Okay, so it depends. It depends on the field you are in, but the point is, if you are testing even an existing theory, your findings can lead you to come up with new theory. And there are a lot of people who are actually coming up with new theories. I have worked with uh, Prof. Una. I called him simply JJ. And he has done a lot of qualitative research. And through some of those qualitative research, there have been new explanations. So that is ongoing. But the issue, if you are training MPhil students or PhD students, they must know and understand the architecture of using theory in research. If they are very experienced, then they can say that, okay, all the existing theories in explaining this do not really help much. So let me just go to the field without any theory in mind and just ask the question and let me see what will come up with it. So there is one distinguished professor in my university who won close to $1 billion recently just to do that in archaeology. I mean, basically because the whole point is all existing theory could not help us. He made a case to the Australian government and they gave him like plenty millions of dollars. Just open question, just go and do it. And nobody will trust you to do that if you have not worked your way through the steps to get there. I've been to somebody's Viva recently. He said because there is no theory to explain why people want to return migration from Australia to Africa. And I'm like, you have not read the literature because if you've read the literature, you would have known that there is an existing theory. But to have a blanket statement that there's no theory, so I'm going to make a theory, that is being basically you are not being truthful to the existing discourse and debates in the field. But if you say that, okay, we know all this, but all these theories have actually not helped us explain this. So I'm going to the field to ask an open question. Yeah, you can go and come back and realize that all that you've gotten is not different from what the old theories have stated. But in the training process, like masters, maybe even long essay, PhD, it's important to start with that because it's a good framework. It's just like building a house. If you don't have a plan, you are likely to build anything. I mean, I was laughing at my mom some years back when she was building a house. Anytime I go, like I asked, where is the plan? He said, oh, she knows what you want. After the building was done, yeah, it's standing there as a building, but her expectation, whatever was in her mind, wasn't what actually came out because she was just building, adding blocks, okay, instructing the do it this way, do it this way. But if she had started with a plan from the very beginning, or if she had used a plan that has worked, she could have come up with maybe a much more elegant house. So there are contemporary researchers that are devoted to doing that, but it's good practice and good learning that as masters, because I'm being pragmatic here, as masters or PhD students, you have to start with theory. And sometimes the way to do that is to be a mentee under other people. I have been a mentee under JJ, um, Professor Nakwa, Prof. Jomeku, and a lot of other professors from other universities, even the University of Ghana, Professor Aheto. And I've also worked with colleagues, Isaac and myself, we go way back in our bachelor's in social work program. Yeah, so through collaborations and all that, then we learn. So if at some point we come to the conclusion that, you know what, all these theories we've used to understand this, actually, they did not help us, or their explanatory power is is less than 10%. So it means that 90% of the explanation for why this is happening, we do not know. Why don't we just go to the field and ask open-ended questions? So in Australia, there is emphasis on what they call action research or co-design. So going to the field and basically doing everything with the end users And that helps comes out with like new explanations. So yeah, so people are doing it, just that maybe because it's also very difficult. It's difficult to actually create a new theory. It's not easy. Yeah. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. I hope that everybody's questions have been addressed, and we wish we could go a bit further, but time is against us. And so we'll have to end it here for today. But before we go, we are so much privileged to have the board chair with us today, the board chair of Africa Interdisciplinary Research Institute. Unfortunately, our director is not here today in the person of Dr. Rachel Thompson. And so we have the board chair here who is going to close us. But before I give him the floor, I just want to take us through a few notices. So I'm putting in the chat box 2 links right away. We have the evaluation link and then the registration link. And so we'd want you to access the webinar today. Just tell us what you think. There are a few rubrics there. Just select what is more applicable to you. And then we can have that for improvement and then serve you better subsequently. And we also have the registration link. Most of us did not register. And so I would entreat us to register. We will be sending the materials to you after you register. So please ensure to do that so that you can have the webinar materials. Yeah, so I would hand over now to our board chair, Professor Jerry Ona, from the University of San Francisco, California, to address us. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Wisdom, and thank you everybody for coming. Dr. Pascal Agbadi, thank you so much for waking up 4 a.m. Brisbane time to be here and then present this. We're very, very grateful. This is the second session. I couldn't join Dr. Yabua's section, but I think this is very, very important and very helpful. Dr. Agbadi has been a very, very diligent, hardworking mentee, number one on the list of all among all my mentees. So thank you. Very informative. I know using theory is one of the most challenging thing for PhD student, master student, or even early career researchers in general. So helping us understand this in a very simplified way is very, 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 very helpful. And I believe will go a long way to help us to really apply this because theory, using theory in research is very important. You don't want to just go out there fishing whilst you can really bring everything to a very specified or framework or in a very directed manner. So thank you so much, Dr. Agbadi. And I want to thank all of you also for joining. Like Wisdom said, please go ahead and share your feedback, and then it's going to help us design more webinar sessions for you in the future. So have a very good morning, Dr. Agbadi, and then good evening to all of you in Ghana, and then wherever somebody else, or good afternoon, or whatever it is for you. And then thank you, and then we'll see you the last week of June, last Tuesday of June. Have a wonderful evening or day, and see you all later. Bye.
Thank you so much. And so thank you for participating. I'll leave the link here open for 1 minute so that those who are not able to pick the link, you can do that. And then I close the meeting. Thank you so much for coming and see you next month. Bye-bye.